Welcome, everybody, to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast. I'm Pete Wright. There's Nikki Kinzer.
Hello.
Hello, Nikki.
Hello, Pete.
We're talking about a subject that's very close to my heart today.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you bored right now?
Do you know what the thing is? I think there are people who I think I'm one of those people that I really relish some dose of boredom. You know?
Tell me more. What do you mean?
Well, it's so rare that I can actually sit still.
True. Okay.
Right?
I get that.
I need some sort of, I generally need some sort of noise around me at all times. Like, I go take a shower, I got to turn a podcast on. I do something. It's like a real fight for me to actually turn stuff off and like shut everything down. That when I find that space where I actually am able to do it and there's quiet and everybody's gone, and I let myself just get just a little bored, I find that really kind of reflective, and I sort of cherish those moments.
That's good. Because I've heard the opposite too, where some people, if they feel a little bit bored, it's actually more painful. Like it's an antsy, anxiety-driven.
No, I think that's exactly it. That's why I always have something to do. Like if it's a podcast, I'm learning something. I'm like, there's something going on all the time, and that's why it happens so rarely that I'm actually able to find a center in nothingness.
Right.
That I really just sort of have to latch onto it, kind of cherish it.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, we're kind of in the summer right now, so I'm sure that people are also hearing that their kids are bored. I found myself being bored on a Saturday afternoon. It was like I wasn't really motivated, but I didn't really know what to do, so I'm kind of wandering around. I could do this, but I don't want to. And
you end up wandering the streets collecting cats.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, I'm bored. I'm bored. What am I going to do with this? We also get bored, of course, waiting in line, waiting for your doctor. Oh my gosh, I think that's painful at times. Yeah. Traffic can get boring if you're not listening to a great podcast. Or great music, And then I think about, I went to the doctor the other day with my daughter and I had my iPhone and I, of course, took it out and she's looking at me and she's like, Mom, who's the one with the hurt foot? I'm like, ew, you want my iPhone? Oh. Okay, darling, here you go. So I'm sitting there waiting because she had a pretty hurt foot. So I felt kind of bad. But I'm thinking, what did people do before smartphones? I mean, really, they must have just been out of their mind. Yeah. Maybe they had to actually talk to each other. Well,
right. I don't have a memory. I know practically that there was a time before. There had
to have been a time before.
Right. I remember growing up, we didn't have that. And I remember, I was outside all the time, just doing crazy stuff. I probably should have had an iPhone at that point. but the real trick of it is I don't remember what my brain was like, right?
Yeah,
I don't remember how I occupied my inner self.
Yeah.
I have no memory of that.
Well, I have a few tips on maybe how to cure some boredom, if you're waiting in line. You want to hear them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you don't have your smartphone, of course, because that's always something that can distract you and keep you busy when you're waiting for something. But a couple other things. Something that I read the other day that I thought was fascinating, and nobody would know that you were doing this, is playing a game. Say you're waiting in line at the grocery store, and you decide to look at how many people are on their smartphones or how many people are wearing yellow. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but it keeps your brain busy focusing on whatever game it is you're playing in your head rather than the annoyance that you're feeling because the line is taking too long.
Right. I had a friend who does this. I have a friend who does this. He calls it the Sherlock Holmes game, right? Where these are sort of observation tests that he gives himself. So he's sitting in that crowded doctor's office, and he'll just flash his eyes around, and then just sort of close his eyes or look at the floor and try to recount in his head, what color were the shoes of the lady in the corner,
fun.
and really trying to up his observational skill. And I found that really fascinating because it's something that I'm not, naturally terribly good at.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah, I like that. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Another tip I have, especially for students who are in a classroom setting and maybe the lecture is a little bit boring and they're trying to stay focused. Of course, fidgeting can be part of ADHD, and it can be really hard to sit still. So if you can carry like some kind of little rock or something in your hand that you can kind of play with and turn around with your fingers, or maybe it's just a pencil or something like that. It doesn't bug anybody else, so it can't be anything like really loud or anything. But just having your hands busy can help you stay focused and keep you comfortable, so that it's not painful to sit in class or painful to sit in the doctor's chair or whatever. And I think I've seen you do this before, haven't you? Like when we've met, you have like some little ball or something.
Yeah, always. I have a collection. Here's my collection. So what I use most is the Rejuvenation Hand Invigoration Putty, and I use the firm, and I can use it for about 3 months before I have to order some new stuff because it doesn't stay firm forever. It's just like it's silly putty, but it's really, really stiff, so it kind of lets you work your hands. So that's my first one. The next one, my daughter, she knows me so well, she got me this. It's like a perfectly polished piece of wood that's sort of a diamond shape, but all the corners are soft, and you can hold it in your hand and just like it's like a worry stone but made of wood. It's about the size of a golf ball, and it lets me just kind of keep it constantly in motion in my hand. And as soon as this is the best part about these things, and I also have a worry stone too, but it tends to be so small that I will misplace it for like weeks at a time. So the thing that I love about these things, and I think this is what you're getting at, as soon as my hand is moving, the rest of me stops moving. Right? And I think that comes with maturity. I've noticed that, kids who are struggling with ADHD struggle with like the whole body stillness.
Right.
But for me, I've sort of reached a certain age where as soon as I don't have that anxiety that, oh my gosh, I'm going to crawl out of my skin if I don't stand up and leave this room right now kind of feeling, if my hand is busy. So having that, the putty or the wood, and I think in some cases the cell phone, that's another reason the cell phone is such an attractive device, because it's hand sized, it's always in my hand, it's kind of smooth, it feels good, and so I can fidget with that too. So
absolutely, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so another tip is focusing on the positive, which is really just changing the language of how you're talking to yourself about the situation. So, for example, it can be very easy to get angry when you're stuck in traffic, right? So what we want to do is kind of flip that around and think about how grateful you are that you have a car, or how grateful you are that you're actually going to where you're going, and kind of just really continue to focus on whatever positive you can. And again, what it does is it kind of switches, or it basically takes you away from that negative feeling, which just continues to give you negative energy. We want positive energy. And so it's just flipping the language around on how you're talking to yourself. Not always the easiest thing when somebody cuts you off and you're mad. But, again, if you're driving by a homeless person, then you can also, you're grateful, where you are and what you're doing, and it could always be worse.
I think that's another muscle. I was listening to an interview with a director, Guillermo del Toro, and he's a director who's been faced with a number of. Well, he's been very successful. He's a very creative visual director, but he's also faced a number of flops. And he was asked, how do you move forward? And he has, I think, deals with some of these same issues. But he said, I was blessed with a remarkably small rear view mirror. And I loved that concept. He said, it's so hard for me to look backwards because of this small rearview mirror. And I think that's a muscle, right? It's this idea that you have to think about shrinking that muscle or strengthening that muscle to forget. When somebody cuts you off, how quickly can I forget about it? Because it would be way too easy for me just to remember and linger on it and feel cruddy all day long, right?
That's right.
Oh God, if only my window's down, here's what I would have said to that jerk who cut me off on the highway.
That's right.
Because you know what? That jerk who cut you off on the highway has forgotten.
Yes. Well, and it's probably not fair either for us to quickly judge that person in
Right.
the sense of, oh, they're just a jerk. I mean, maybe they're on their way somewhere that they have to be for
Right.
some reason that we can't fathom. And so, I mean, yeah, I think you're right. We have to kind of just put it behind us and not think about it anymore. It's not important.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else?
Oh, okay. So on that Saturday afternoon where I'm wandering around.
Yes.
I was watching a talk show once, and I thought this was a great idea. One of the characteristics of happy people who are happy, are people who try new things. And I thought, well, what a great way to break that boredom cycle, that if you really, it's a Saturday afternoon and you're bored and you're not really sure what you want to do, look for a new activity. Look for, I like to cook, so maybe I look for a new recipe. Or if you're going out to dinner that night, try a new restaurant, or at least go to the same restaurant but try a different dish. Just all of these little things that could be something new and something kind of sparking your interest that, it generates that happy feeling. And who doesn't want that?
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I love the happy feeling.
Okay, procrastinating can be a symptom because you don't want to do a boring task, right? So it could be anything like filing or doing a chore around the house, something that you don't want to do. We've talked about this before in another podcast. I can't remember which one, forgive me. But we talked about how for the ADHD mind, it's actually smarter to stimulate your mind with something exciting and fun first, to get you going before you work on the boring task. So do something fun. If you like to play music, go do your guitar, play on your guitar for 15 minutes, and then go work on your boring task for 15 minutes. And then you can kind of switch back and forth. But the nice thing about this is, yes, it may take you longer to get something done, but it's definitely better than not doing it at all.
I could not agree with this more. And I have been more focused. I'd never made that connection until we talked about that in that last episode. And again, I also do not remember which one that was, but it was pretty recent. I mean, it wasn't like a year ago.
No.
So one of the things I've been trying to just notice about myself is how productive I am when I just come down cold versus when I, sit down and do something that I really look forward to just to get started. And I'm really noticing that connection. That's something I'd never made, that connection, and, obviously. And now, I find myself sitting down and I say, you know what, I'm going to give myself permission to play threes on my phone, which is a fantastic little sort of mathy game that I get. And usually, I'll feel like, oh, I should be doing something else. But as soon as I say, I'm going to take 10 minutes to warm up with threes, then I come out warmed up. It's like intentional activity that wakes me up. It gets me kind of moving forward, and then I find I'm able to start with that sort of more creative spirit and last even a little bit longer than I normally would.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I love it. Yeah. Anything else that you do that I didn't mention? I'm just curious if you have any other.
No, I feel like I've I feel like I've interjected enough. But the only other thing that I would just add is writing.
Yeah.
I find that when and it's not just sitting down at the computer and writing, it's actually getting a Moleskine notebook or something and sitting down with a pen and writing. And you don't even have to write anything of merit. I mean, you could just write song lyrics of your favorite song or something. Just the idea of making that visual sort of hand connection, watching your hand move, right? That is another thing that I find really engages me, and it forces more of my senses to engage at the same time, right? There's that tactile sense, there's smell, there's visual, and it's sort of that sort of understanding gross space and cognitive sort of spatial relationships. I find that is a really powerful way to kind of warm me up and cool me down when I'm finding I'm in a particularly stressful state.
Very good.
Yeah.
So do you do that just on a piece of paper, an actual piece of paper, or are you doing that on your iPad?
No. I do it. I have rediscovered my love of paper for this very purpose. I think there's, and I even have tried. I have what I consider probably the best stylus for my iPad. It's the Evernote Jot Script stylus. I use it every day. I love it. It's a very fine point. Otherwise, it's really quite good for writing. But I have found that it doesn't fill the same function for me. It doesn't allow me to actually get that sort of head clearing kind of feeling than when I actually pick up a pen and write.
Yeah, there's got to be a science to that, I'm sure, because you're not the first person I've heard that has said that.
Yeah, I feel like when I get off of that habit, I notice a difference now. When I notice it, and I think people I'll call it journaling, right? We'll say journaling, but whatever you call it, writing therapy, whatever it is, I think people give it a hard time because they think, I'm not a writer. Well, you don't have to. That's not the point. You don't have to be a writer. You write and then ball it up and throw it away if you want.
Right.
But just create that activity. It engages your brain in a different way. So I encourage people to give that a shot.
There you go.
So that's it. That's my stuff.
That's it. I like it.
Awesome. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening to the show. You can find out more about it at takecontrolorganizing.com. You can find Nikki everywhere you want to find Nikki, at Facebook, on Twitter, or on Pinterest at Take Control ADHD. And you should do that. You should connect with Nikki there. You can find me at Pete Wright on Twitter, and I would love to take any questions or thoughts and share your ideas as well on Twitter. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.